This video shows you how to install the shock deck to the matrix. First, we have the shock plate, some two-way tape, and a NASA flight controller two-way tape, some zip ties, 20 millimeter female aluminum posts, 3 millimeter screws, and 6 shock posts. Okay, so here we go. First, there are 10 screws on top of the matrix. Remove this. I haven't loosened already to shorten this video. Next, we want to pry it open. Pry this. If you have the gimbal controller, you need to remove this, and we need to move this to a shock plate. Okay, so all these electronics gonna go on the deck above this. Okay, so here we go. It is hard to come off, so you have to use a large flathead screwdriver. Go underneath, but go underneath the two-way tape so you don't scratch the circuit board. Go under and use a wedging action to wedge it up slowly. Now it might still try to come down because the tape is so strong. You might want to put something underneath it and continue poking in all the way in and pry it. Let's see, I can show that. Pry this open, put this in, pry more until it comes up. Okay, here we go. Got that removed. We'll do the same thing to the NASA. Comes right off. Use the prying action, and the same thing with this. Go in there. Make sure you don't scratch the carbon too hard. Okay. Poke it in. Get this one out. That's the receiver. You want to leave the LED untouched. Okay. So go ahead, and so all the electronics are loose, and we want to pull all these cables out, but you gotta make sure they're numbered. Okay. Cut that zip tie. This is where all the cables are gonna come through. Okay. So we have all the electronics all removed right now, and we're ready to put the shock post down. Okay. So take all these screws out. I have somebody help me over here so we can make this video as short as we can. Okay, so here we have all 10 posts, all the posts removed, all 10 posts, and we're gonna replace these posts with the shock post. Okay, one goes here. Toward the end, and I have one. It's gonna go right at about the middle, right behind the front arm, and then we have one in the very front. And you do the same thing. So we have one, 2, 3. And then 3 on the other side. 4 posts put on. 1, 2. Let me see if I can show that. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there are 4 posts put on in advance. And so over here we have a shock post. Here we have a regular post. There's no shock post underneath this one, and there is no shock post underneath this one. Okay, so there's a shock post underneath here, one underneath here, and one underneath here. Over here we just have a screw that goes from bottom up to secure this. Now when you install the shock deck, make sure there's no post in between this layer and this layer. Okay, there are only 6 rubber shock between this layer and this layer. No post, otherwise your shock deck will not work. Okay, so we have 10 posts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each side already installed, and we have the NASA flight controller with the receiver. You can see that I did not remove any of the plugs between them, otherwise it would be a lot more work trying to put them back in the exact position. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, all 4 connectors all lined up. It went through this hole and just plug right back in. You can plug it in one at a time, but I have everything lined up already. Okay, so you can just put this back in the rear over here, and then put this over here. Now I won't show the two-way tape being applied to the back of them, but you need to cut the two-way tape here and apply them back in. Okay, now one thing that's really important is to make sure the NASA is positioned in the center of gravity between the 4 motors. We have 4 motors. Right between the 4 motor there's an intersection point, and that intersection point is between these 2 posts, right approximately where the A is, the letter A. Okay, it's actually right between these 2 posts, to be more exact. Okay, and you just peel off the tape and put it back in, and this is the center of the NASA flight controller. This is the center of gravity for the quad, and I'm just gonna place it and stick it to it. Okay, and you put the gimbal controller back on the same way, and make sure all the wires are labeled and plug in exactly the same way back. Make sure you put a little shoe glue or silicone on the connector so the connector don't fall off. If the connector falls off, your gimbal will not work. Okay, these connectors are kind of loose, and we put some silicone on it to secure the connectors. Okay, so there you have it. Just go ahead and close this cover when you finish and secure the 10 screws back. Okay, final check is you want to make sure you only have the 6 rubber posts between this deck and this deck. Okay, no aluminum posts in between them, otherwise you won't have this deck fully isolated. Last thing you want to do is make sure that you remove the propellers and power everything up. Make sure everything is working, the motor is turning, everything. Don't have the propeller on them. It's very dangerous to work with these propellers on. Okay, and once they're working, you need to put the propellers back, tie down the matrix to a bench or a table, and try to fly it and make sure everything is operational. And make sure this antenna is erected and it's secured. So the compass over here is very important, the direction of the compass. If it's not pointing to the front, it will not operate. So this antenna need to be erected back on. Okay, Good luck, and you'll be very happy with a shock deck, because is a total isolation, and its design was the entire layer. So the entire layer is isolated, and you have the battery sitting on top here. Put the battery on top of here. And what that does is it increases the mass. So when there's any kind of a vibration, it will not affect this deck. So not only is it isolated, is also is weighted down. This is an advanced design over the traditional design where you have only a isolated plate, which doesn't work that well. So you'll be very happy with the video quality once you have this shock post install. Again, make sure the battery is on top, and if you put the battery on the bottom, it's not as effective.